All right. Hi, Pastor Kelly here from Grace United Methodist Church of Alamogordo and Tularosa, New Mexico. And I am here with my very, very good friend, Alexis Adams. Hi, Alexis. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Alexis and I go back about, I guess, 5-6 years now. I was really, really blessed to be Alexis's pastor in Minnesota. I was blessed to do her and her husband's wedding. I was extremely blessed to baptize their first child, and now they've added another one since we've been apart from each other. And I'm just so excited to talk to Alexis today about something that's really important to me and to my family, mental health and emotional health. And it's something that I think we need to think about really, really well and hard during this time in isolation and in quarantine. It might be one of the last things on our minds, but it's one of my biggest concerns. The reason I'm talking to Alexis is you have experience, you're professional in this area. You went to school, you were trained, you have a higher education degree in this area. And while you were living in Minnesota, you were a licensed professional counselor. And so I'm just so excited to talk to you today about this, Alexis. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for having me.
So first question that I would love for my church to hear is, why is it important for us to think about our mental health or our emotional health at this time? Like I said, we might be making plans on all these other areas of our lives. We are making financial plans. We're trying to figure out what to do with our kids. We're planning, around school closures. We're planning around retirement plans changing. Why should we be adjusting and shifting and focusing on our mental and emotional health at this time?
Well, mental and emotional health really affect all facets of your life. So when you are mentally unhealthy, you become, physically unhealthy, socially unhealthy, financially unhealthy, professionally unhealthy. It kind of pyramids down. That being said, other aspects of your life also affect your mental, emotional health. So when you're socially unhealthy, it may impact your mental health and emotional health negatively, which we kind of are in these current circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, none of us are being very socially healthy right now. It's on the back burner on all of our lives. It's all really interconnected, isn't it? You can't really separate physical and mental and financial and vocational health. It just all goes together. But I fear, at least I know in my own life, that my mental and emotional health is one of the last things that I focus on, because I think I've got it all under control. I can handle this. I'm going to pull myself up by my bootstraps and just deal with it. But we tend to neglect that mental and emotional health side of our lives, which is why I'm really, really happy to be talking to you today. When you think about this time in quarantine, this time of social isolation, from your professional perspective, what are your biggest concerns for people's health today?
So one of my biggest concerns is that this pandemic is confronting individuals with fears and anxieties that they work on a daily basis to avoid by, occupying themselves with their phones, their friends, their work. In addition, individuals are being confronted with fears and anxieties that they, are new. These financial stresses, these physical stresses, worrying about their loved ones, their own health. So not only do we have the regular day-to-day kind of concerns, but we have these new concerns that we've never been confronted with. And a lot of people have never been taught effective coping skills. Oftentimes we're told to kind of stuff our emotions if they're not good feelings, either by distracting ourselves or lashing out or, just ignoring it altogether so that it comes out in another way. Kind of speaking even to what we were talking about in the first question of mental health is our last priority because it often goes disguised as other things. So, I have a headache or I, have a stomach ache. Sometimes that comes back to your mental health. That comes back to, I'm really stressed and I'm really worried about my family. I'm really worried about I don't have my next paycheck, that kind of thing. So I think it's because mental health is such a big component in all areas of our life, or it impacts all areas of our life. I think that's why it's one of my biggest concerns. And not only that, but this is all new to us. We're being told how we should feel,
Yeah.
kind of taking all of that advice from the wrong places rather than looking at what we do feel. The news is telling us we need to be afraid. Social media is saying you need to be productive. The church is telling us to be hopeful. And we may feel all of these things in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
I worry also for people with existing mental health conditions, such as depression or addiction. They're being confronted with extra stressors that kind of escalate their normal symptoms. There's a lot of uncertainty, downtime, that sort of thing. So we have limited access to the means that typically would be supportive, medications, peers, counseling, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of concerns that I have.
Yeah, when you talked about the uncharted territory that we're in, that's been really exhausting for me. Nothing that I'm doing in my line of work am I prepared for. I mean, and I think most of us can say that, whether you've got a full-time job or you're working from home all the time or you're a stay-at-home parent, or even if you're retired and you're used to going to the golf course every day, you can't do that anymore. And you've been doing that for 10 years and we're not prepared for this. And so that's been really exhausting for me. And I know it has been for lots of other people. So when we think about all these concerns that you have and I share with you, and that I'm experiencing in my own life, and I know our listeners and our watchers are as well, what are some practical things that we can do? I mean, I see you right now with a little kid in your lap, and you're a real person with, and I hope you have some real practical, easy to do things that we can incorporate into our daily lives to stay emotionally and mentally healthy.
Absolutely. So all the things that I'm going to kind of recommend too, I struggle with myself. There are days that I do really well at these things. There are days that I don't do so hot about them. Yeah. So first and foremost, I think it's important that we acknowledge and give space to our feelings. All of our feelings, good, bad, indifferent. Emotions are really neither good nor bad. They serve a purpose. Sometimes we don't always understand what that purpose is in the moment, but they do serve a purpose and they have a reason to be there. I often tell my clients in particular to think of their feelings like a guest at their doorstep. They have to eventually let the guest into their home in order to get rid of the guest. Because if the guest isn't invited into the home, they're going to, keep knocking and pounding on the door and, eventually break in. And it's going to be a lot uglier of a situation than if they had just welcomed the person in, from the first place.
Yeah.
Not only that, but once that's welcomed in, that doesn't mean they have to stay there forever. They're not going to be a live-in resident. So this feeling is eventually going to go. You kind of have to ride your feelings like a wave. Like, okay, right now I'm feeling anxious, but this isn't going to last forever. Right now I'm feeling hopeful. Yeah, that's not always going to last forever, but remember that hope came at one point in your, in your span of your day.
Yeah.
The other thing I would have to say is practicing self-care. So, self-care can mean a lot of things for a lot of different people, and it can kind of change day by day. Sometimes it's as simple as taking a shower or taking the energy to, get dressed from one pair of PJs to the next pair of PJs.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's actually going out and doing something for yourself or going above a little extra for yourself to make yourself feel good or to do the things you need to do. Finding things that you enjoy that aren't focused on other people, aren't focused on, consuming news or doing things that are productive, but rather things just for you. I think it's particularly hard for, at least from what I've heard from some of my friends who are working from home, that they feel kind of conflicted because they're so blessed to have, a paycheck still coming in, but then they feel like they should be on the clock all the time. And especially because they are considered kind of essential employees, or not essential because they're not going in, but their job is important. They're having a hard time breaking that work-life balance because work's with them at home all the time. So being able to find a space to kind of, this is where I work, this is where I live my life and continue to live my life, setting certain times for, these are when I respond to my emails, this is family time. Just as important as it is when you're going to work on a daily basis, it's just as important now. You have to fill your own cup before you can fill somebody else's. So as much as we're called to take care of other people, we also have to take care of ourselves.
Put your mask on the airplane before you put your mask on your own kid theory, right?
Exactly.
You gotta, if you've passed out from lack of oxygen, you can't help anybody. And so
Absolutely.
that's a good word.
And
I need to do that.
yeah, and I struggle with that myself. I mean, for goodness sakes, I have my daughter here with me
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
you know, she's young and dependent on me.
Yeah.
Both of my kids actually are. And so being able to find space for myself sometimes to really let myself feel like, okay, I'm okay to be anxious, or it's okay that I worry right now. Yes, I have to keep kind of a brave face to some extent with my kids, but I also have to allow space for those other things. So for me, my workouts are really a big deal for me. I kind of have been working out more regularly just to keep my head above water, because that's my space to take care of myself, to really get, you know, some pent up energy out and to just feel better physically.
Yeah.
Which then requires me also to like shower and do the normal day to day kind of cleanliness, hygiene stuff too, because it's so easy to just, well, I didn't go anywhere, I'm not going to see anyone, you know, stay in my sweats or do what have you. Another thing is I allow myself to have that, you know, comfort food or the binge watch my weird shows or what have you, because that's part of normal coping too. You're not always going to look like this picture perfect coping.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is the, you know, mindlessly scrolling through your phone, or, you know, ordering an extra large pizza and consuming it yourself or what have you. But keeping a balance. It's all about balance. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing, is what my dad always told me. So
Yeah, it's good advice. Really,
yeah.
good advice.
Yeah.
So those are some great, really practical pieces of advice that you've shared and that you clearly are doing. Many of them resonate with me as well. You know, I'm a creature of habit, and it's been really important for me to keep my routine as much as I can. Because I thrive on routine. I thrive on the habits that I've cultivated. And while some of those have had to adjust, it's kept me sane. And so, and the same thing with physical exercise. You know, I know some people aren't maybe as gung-ho about exercise as others are, but we can at least get out and walk, right? We can at least get out and walk around the block, get outside. That's what I've been telling so many people. So it's good to hear that you echo that just doing something active at this time, because it would just be so easy to just sit on the couch and eat that extra slice of pizza, but eat that slice of pizza and then go for a walk, right? It's that balance you were talking about.
It's a balance. Yeah. And not only that, but limiting how much you're consuming some of this media, because the media is targeted to scare us.
Yeah.
You know, it's okay to be informed, but when you're obsessively watching the media or, you know, kind of allowing it to seep in a little too far, that can drive you a little crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying avoid the news or avoid, you know, other people and that sort of thing, but kind of keep it in check and balance. Other things that you can do, you know, these are good for anything, but particularly a pandemic too, would be, you know, some mindfulness stuff. So mindfulness is about being present in the moment, not allowing yourself to kind of get too far ahead in the worries or too far behind and like getting depressed about what has been, but rather staying in the moment. So, you know, some grounding exercises of focusing on your breath and doing some deep breathing. There's this exercise that I particularly love. It's called, or at least I call it, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it's engaging all of your senses. You can do it kind of in different orders, but you have to choose, okay, so 5 things that I see right now, 4 things that I'm touching, 3 things that I smell, 2 things that I taste, 1 thing that I don't remember which one I've messed up on here. So see, touch, smell, hear, 1 thing that I hear.
Okay.
So, you know, and you can do that in whatever order, but it brings you back to the present moment.
Okay. Wow.
You know, observing and creating some tension in your body and noticing what you're feeling in your body, just kind of bringing yourself back to the present moment so that you're not getting too far ahead in the worries. And even though we have to stay socially distant, that doesn't mean we have to be socially isolated. So reaching out to friends, reaching out to peers, that kind of thing that, you know, can provide that support. My friends and I have a weekly wine night over Google Duo, and it's our place to kind of vent about those concerns with the pandemic if we need that, or it's sometimes to, you know, talk about the latest TV show that we've watched. It's a lot of different things, but it helps to kind of give that sense of normalcy again.
That's awesome. It's so cool what you're saying about mindfulness. I'm preparing a sermon about Moses leading the Israelites from Egypt, and they're just right at the Red Sea. I'm not sure when this is going to air, so people watching this, you may have heard the sermon already, you may not have. But Moses is there, and Pharaoh's on one side, and the Red Sea is on the other, and there the Israelites are, and they are freaked out. I mean, they know that this is their end. They are going to die, and they are scared to death. And they're complaining. They're saying, Moses, why did you lead us here? I mean, they're just so pent up with anger and fear and anxiety. And what Moses said resonates with what you just said. He doesn't chastise them. He doesn't get onto them. He says, be still.
Mm-hmm.
He says, be still. And then he turns to the Red Sea, and through him, God parted the waters. So I just love how biblically true that is, what you just said, of just taking a moment and realizing that we're not in charge. You know, we can be still in our bodies, in our souls, and wherever we're at, with all the anxiety and fear around us. A little bit of stillness can really help a lot. And it can open our eyes to the path forward, whatever that might be.
Absolutely. So actually kind of that ties into one of the things we talked about earlier was, you know, how my faith plays into all of this. And to really and honestly, it comes down to, it's a reminder of what's in my control and what's not in my control.
Wow.
You know, that doesn't mean that I can't have my feelings about this or that, that I can't be anxious, that I can't be angry, that I can't be disappointed. But it reminds me of how much power do I need to give these feelings?
Yeah.
You know, I can't worry all day and lose sight of what I'm actually doing and enjoying my life. I can't, you know, enjoy all my life and not have a little anxiety to protect my family, that kind of thing. You know, I have to realize that, you know, God is greater than what I know of my own. I may not know how everything's going to play out, but he's bigger than me, and he sees the end goal here.
Yeah. That's awesome. What are some red flags that people should be looking for? Again, I think for many of us, we do think about mental and emotional health a lot, but for many others, we just don't consider it. And so we don't even know what to look for to even tell if we're struggling. And so what are some red flags that families or even individuals can look for to see if somebody's struggling in their household with, and might need to put some of these coping mechanisms into place or seek help?
That's really a kind of intricate question at best, because it can take so many different forms.
Okay.
You know, for one person, it could be that they're lying in bed all day, you know, not wanting to go out, feeling extra lethargic and unengaged in life. For others, it might be that they're over functioning, so that they're, you know, cleaning, you know, the baseboards of the house and, you know, making sure that all meals are prepped and things like that, because either way, it's a way to feel numb or to avoid what they're actually feeling.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's important to do check-ins with yourself and to have somebody that you can check in with, of saying, you know, I'm feeling this way, or they are able to approach you and say, you know, I've noticed that you're spending some extra time in bed, or that you're eating more, or that you're eating less, or that you're, you know, overly productive here, just to have that kind of balance again. And sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes that's just how you're going to cope in that moment, and it's not long standing, but sometimes it can be a red flag for a more serious issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Other things would be like mood shifts, so extra irritability, change in your energy, so either really energetic or, you know, lethargic. Obsessive thoughts, so constantly thinking about sickness, or constantly thinking about what you need to do next. Or it's the obsessive thoughts don't have to necessarily be around the pandemic. It can be about your children, it can be about your spouse, it can be about your house, that kind of thing. Trouble sleeping, trouble falling asleep, trouble staying asleep, change in appetite, those kind of things. So just as I said kind of when we first began, mental health affects all facets of your life. So kind of keeping a check in with each of those facets. How am I doing professionally? Am I overworking, or am I not working?
Mm-hmm.
How am I doing, you know, socially? Am I totally avoiding my friends? Am I avoiding my spouse? Am I being more argumentative? That kind of thing. So being able to check in one of those areas, and also have somebody who could be an accountability partner for you there too.
Yeah. It's a very biblical thing, right? Having somebody that you can talk to. I mean, that's what
Absolutely.
this is all about. And for people listening or watching this, I just want you to know that I'm not a licensed professional counselor. However, I've got connections. And so if you're watching this, go to your pastor. If you need an ear, go to your pastor. And if your pastor is anything worth their training or worth their salt, they should be able to listen and refer you. You know, they should know when they've reached their limit of their skill set. And pick up your phone and call your pastor. They would love to hear you and talk to you. And like I said, they will wisely refer you on to a professional if they think it's at that point. And so please call your pastor if you're involved in the church at all. And I know, Alexis, so much can be done over the telephone and on like what we're doing right now with video conferencing with professionals who we can talk to, even though we can't physically go places right now. There are lots of resources, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of my peers from my grad school program are currently working telemental health. So they're meeting their clients. It's not necessarily Zoom or Google Duo or anything. They're more private and secure networks, but they're having these face-to-face conversations. And honestly, they're feeling that their workload is kind of growing because everybody's got stress. You know, everybody has some anxieties about all of this. So what I would recommend, you know, obviously going to your pastor is a good suggestion too, but don't feel like you have to be limited to going to a counselor when things get serious. They're here to just talk about the day-to-day stuff too. I mean, I've had several clients who, you know, they were just having an off couple days or an off week or, you know, struggling this or just doing kind of a monthly check-in of, hey, this is what's going on with me. So don't feel limited. Just, I'm not bad enough to go to a counselor.
Yeah. Great words. Any last words of hope or encouragement that you'd like to give our listeners or our viewers today?
At this point, no, just stay home and stay healthy and safe, and we'll continue to kind of pray that this gets better.
Amen.
Flatten the curve.
Amen. Well, Alexis, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your passion and your gifting with our church and whoever else is going to hear or watch this. I know that this is going to help a lot of people. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye.